This is a special edition of Late Night Health. I'm Mark Alyn. We have the highest suicide rate in almost 50 years, and I guess we can blame that on the pandemic and COVID-19. Our guest is Dr. Cara McNulty. She is the president of Behavioral Health and EAP at Aetna, and she's going to share with us some important information about preventing suicide with proper mental health care. Dr. Cara, welcome to Late Night Health. We have a secondary pandemic, don't we?
We sure do. And now more than ever, it's imperative that we are talking about mental health as a normal part of our health well-being and really removing stigma so that people can seek help and support that they need.
You're president of Behavioral Health and EAP at Aetna. What is EAP?
EAP is employee assistance programs. So we offer these services to hundreds of companies and service millions of employees. But we also offer services broadly to anyone, whether they have Aetna insurance or not, because we are dedicated to improving the health outcomes, specifically mental health outcomes, of the total population.
A few days ago, a friend of mine wrote me a note and said, because of the pandemic, not being able to see friends or family, she was going mad. Now, she was being somewhat sarcastic, but this isolation, is that one of the major causes of suicide, especially in our younger people?
It's interesting. There's numerous factors that are increasing our rates of suicide, and COVID-19 hasn't helped. So isolation absolutely is affecting everyone across the country. And yet, when we look at the 18 to 24-year-old population, the CDC recently did a survey, and 1 in 4 18 to 24-year-olds has considered suicide in the past 30 days. Now, when we think about that, I know, it's very scary. And so when we think about that, it's not only the pandemic, it is also, I think this population is the most technically savvy, engaged, utilizing social media, and yet social media, often we see that what is posted is showing people have this perfect life. And so these young adults are looking at it like, oh gosh, that's not my life. I don't feel like that. And so it's important that we use social media to also show that it's okay not to be okay. And this is hard, and there's grief and loss, and there's help.
And Aetna is offering that. You mentioned, I want to make sure I get this straight. You mentioned that even if you have other insurance or no insurance, because millions of Americans still have no insurance, Aetna's there to help?
Absolutely. We offer support through something called Resources for Living, and it is confidential phone support, counseling sessions, and tools that help people who are in need themselves or have a loved one in need. And it's just giving access so people don't have to search, but it's right there. We help anyone.
And we should note that as we're airing this, this is this month, September, is a special suicide prevention month. You mentioned the young people. What about older people, say people's 55, 60 plus? Is there a suicide rate going up as well?
Sure. I mean, when we think about 55 and up, their rate has continued to increase, not as dramatic as that younger adult population, but it's just as important that we're all taking care of our own mental health and talking to our friends and family about their mental health. So when we think about taking care of our own mental health, I mean, it's hard right now. The unknowns are hard, so making sure we're sleeping and getting good sleep and eating well and exercising and getting outside. And then when we think about those around us, making sure we're checking on our people. So, checking in, how are you doing, whether that's through FaceTime or by calling or texting. But right now, more than ever, we need to be connecting with voices and with the people that maybe are less likely to reach out to us.
Is it normal, and that's a funny word that I'm using, but is it normal to have suicidal thoughts once in a while at any age?
Absolutely. And it's not funny to say, is it normal? I mean, life can be very challenging, and someone who has suicidal thoughts is not abnormal. What we need to do, though, is make sure that people know that they don't have to go through this alone. And we can help them, and it's okay to talk about, and there's resources available. Because too often, people feel that they're the only one experiencing those feelings.
One of the things that we have is that there is this stigma of suicide. In my younger days, I can remember at least one friend who OD'd, and it was apparently intentional, and he had tried before, numerous times before, and he finally died. What can we do to reach out? I mean, I would have called him, I would have talked to him, I would have hugged him, I would have done anything, but I'm not a trained professional.
Right. Well, that's the gift, is we don't have to be trained professionals to engage. And the first thing we can do is know the warning signs. And those are when we see people who are maybe withdrawing or being more isolated than they have been, and a little tricky in a pandemic, but are people not returning calls and texts or going to socially appropriate distance gathering. Also, if you see someone who's acting anxious, more anxious than normal, agitated, restless, if somebody is sleeping a lot or not sleeping very much at all, if you see people self-medicating, using alcohol more than they normally would, or drugs, or if you hear people saying, I just feel hopeless, I'm a burden, or actually talking about taking their own lives. We know that 90% of people who die by suicide have a potentially preventable condition, and they likely have attempted prior. And so it's really important that we know those signs, and then we act on those signs by having conversations, reaching out, asking people, how are you? Are you okay? I see that you're distancing yourself or that you're sleeping a lot, and making it be okay for people to share their story and get help.
And if somebody is interested in utilizing the services of Aetna Insurance and CVS, how do they do that?
Absolutely. They can go to cvshealth.com/suicide prevention. And there they will find access to our resources, lists of support tools, and also better information on how to understand the signs and symptoms and what to do about it. What we do know is when we take and have the courage to have the conversations save lives. And
at the same time, it's all anonymous, or do you sign in?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. These are confidential services. We do not want to put up any barriers for people seeking care.
If you're suffering yourself, go to cvshealth.com/suicide prevention. And I got that correct, I think. Dr. McNulty, thank you very much for all the help that you're doing and giving to people. We appreciate it here at Late Night Health. I'm Mark Alyn. We will be back very soon.